asked what stories I love, I think that all stories have to have an element of emotion. It has to make people really feel something. I want to open people's minds to new ways of thinking. They're the stories that I love the most.
Movies are about escapism and getting away from the world and the lives that we know. To me, the films that I make fit really well into that because the stories that I love to tell are about making people think outside the box and looking at the world and themselves in perhaps a different way to what they've done before. It was a bit over 5 years ago now. I remember I was sitting in a university lecture and this idea kind of popped into my head for this film called Abducted.
Initially, it was a concept that Ash had. He had the idea that what if someone had been abducted by aliens, and rather than taking the sci-fi view, was looking at the personal view. How would they deal with that psychologically?
Because a lot of films that involve alien abduction, it's all about that science fiction element. But to me, the really interesting part of it was, if that actually happened, what effect would that have on an individual? Reasonably early on in the process, I started collaborating with another actor who I'd worked with at the time, and we were still throwing around these ideas of people being abducted by aliens.
And at the time, Ash was living in a house that I was renting, and because I had taught screenwriting, I basically had gone over and I would help them and give them ideas with plot pointing and stuff, but I wasn't terribly engaged with the whole story.
To be honest, in the first year of writing, we really struggled with the actual plot. We had a lot of good ideas and themes and things that we wanted to explore, but the story just didn't really ever seem to go anywhere. And it was probably about 2 years after I started it that the co-writer and I that I were working with just decided to go separate ways. I still felt that there was something there, not necessarily to do with the aliens, but the idea that there was something more to life, that there was more to this world and more to us than we kind of, usually think about. I had a lot of ideas, but I didn't really have a structure in place for all of those things to fit into. It was really beneficial for me to have someone like Brendan come onto the project because he's got so many more years experience in storytelling than I do.
So by the time I came on board with the script writing, we were ready to go back to the drawing board and basically clean the slate.
Going back to the drawing board gave Brendan and I this wonderful opportunity for us to start talking about all the different concepts and ideas that we were both passionate about.
Which is exciting because both Ash and I, where we're interested is our interests are outside the norm. And so we looked at all sorts of things. We looked at things that were unexplained, like crop circles and intuitive insight and different quantum physics and string theory concepts.
We just started thinking, like, what else is out there? What else can we make this story about that kind of explores that huge realm of possibility of, I guess, are we alone in the universe? Who are we? What are we? And what is life all about? I guess we wanted to explore some ideas that made people think about answers to those questions that maybe they hadn't thought about before.
We came up with some pretty wild and woolly ideas.
And we've got notebooks and notebooks full of notes and ideas, and
we had an absolute ball just basically brainstorming all the different types of things that could possibly exist out there.
We reasonably quickly decided upon this idea of in some way that this character was going to be from a parallel universe or another world.
There was one there that he was like the Messiah, like the chosen one, that he had special powers, and then we played with the idea that he was a pure one, that he came over here like a baby in a human body, so he had no values, no morals or anything, and it was like, how would we impose those upon him if he was in our society?
What would a perfect world be like, and what would we be like if we lived in that kind of environment?
The universe that he came from was perfect, where there was no war, like war wasn't even a concept, and there was no pollution and there was no illness, and it was all because they had made different choices.
I remember Brendan came to me one day with this idea, and he said, what if when we're dreaming, we're not just experiencing kind of a figment of our imagination? What if it's actually kind of a window into another world and another version of us?
And then, not sort of straight after it, but we got talking about stuff, and Ash then suggested something like, he goes, I've always wondered whether what it'd be like if every decision that we make, the opposite is being played out somewhere else in another world. Eventually, we began to tease those two concepts together.
And, it's been probably 2 or 3 years since then, but that's really where the story's gone today.